So we were discussing about methods of data collection. In the previous lecture, we discussed all the methods of data collection. Those were used in quantitative research and how to collect the data that we discussed in the previous lecture. In today's lecture, we will discuss about methods of data collection in qualitative research. So there are three main methods of data collection in qualitative research. First is unstructured interviews. Second is participant observation, and third is secondary sources. One by one, we will go into details of this. Now, first is unstructured interview, and you can conduct unstructured interview by a method called as in-depth interview. So what is in-depth interview? Basically, it is face-to-face interaction, repeated face-to-face encounters with the participant. So in-depth interviewing, repeated face-to-face encounter occurs between the researcher and the informants, directed towards understanding informants' perspective on their lives, experiences, or situations as expressed in their own word. Now, in qualitative research, what we are doing, we are dealing with somebody's perception, somebody's emotion, somebody's feeling. Okay, so that is a qualitative research. Sorry, in qualitative research, we are doing that, right? In quantitative research, we deal with the numbers, we deal with the numerals. Okay, but in qualitative research, we deal with the perceptions, feeling, or emotions. So here, what is happening? In-depth interview, you are having repeated face-to-face encounters or repeated face-to-face interaction with the participant. Okay, so you will interview the participant maybe one time, two time, or repeated time to collect the information from the participants, so that you will understand what is their perspective, what is their experiences, what is their situation, what was their condition. Okay, so that is expressed by them in their own words, and that is recorded by you as an investigator or as a researcher. So that is in-depth interview. So in-depth interview, you have an interview guide, and based on that interview guide, you will ask the questions, right? The questions are asked to the participants or informants, and then based on the answers they are giving, you will ask further questions. So you may be having loose guide or loose interview guide, so that you will come to know what topics to be covered that should be related to your research problem. Now you have your research problem in place. You want to find out answer to your research problem. So you will ask certain questions that will be research oriented questions or objective oriented questions, you can say, or hypothesis, whatever is your research hypothesis. To prove or disprove your research hypothesis, you will ask certain questions to that person. Okay, so you will have your guide, interview guide. So that interview guide will help you to stick to your research hypothesis or your research problem or your research research objectives, right? So that is in-depth interview. It seeks to understand the latter's perspective, means it seeks to understand the perspective of the respondents or perspective of the informants or perspective of the participants. So you will have in-depth interview. In-depth means in-depth you will collect the information from all angles, from 360-degree angles. You will collect the information from the participants on the issue which is under study. So that is called as in-depth interview. So it is face-to-face interaction with one single participant. So here what is happening? There is a researcher, and that research is having face-to-face interaction either one time or multiple times with the participant in a face-to-face manner. Okay. Focus group interviews. Now we discussed about in-depth interview. So that in-depth interview is happening in a face-to-face manner with only one person or only single participant or single informant. But in case of focus group interviews, this is a group of people. So it is similar to your in-depth interview. Here also you are taking in-depth interview, but it is for the group of people. Previously in in-depth interview, you were interviewing only one person. You were having interaction in face-to-face interaction only with one person. But in case of focus group interaction or interviews, you have in-depth interview or face-to-face interaction with a group of people. That is the only difference. So the only difference between a focus group interview and in-depth interview is that the former is undertaken, that is focus group interview is undertaken with a group, and in-depth interview is taken or it is conducted with an individual person. In a focus group interview, you explore the perceptions, experiences, and understanding of a group of people. Okay, so here what are you doing in a focus group interview? These are the people, these are group of people who are having similar experience, who are having similar situation, who are having similar condition. Now you 40 people who are attending my lectures are belonging to a particular batch, maybe PhD batch of Jan, okay, 23. So you have something in common, like you are having common coursework syllabus, or you are having certain common lectures on research methodology. So your group of people undergoing certain kind of experience which is similar in nature. Okay, so that your group become a focus group. Focus group means focus group of Jan 2023 batch. If I want to have a qualitative research with your batch and I want to collect some information, I can collect that information in a focus group manner, because you're a cohort group, you are a focus group, you belong to one particular batch, you are having similar experience, you are undergoing similar syllabus, you are undergoing similar kind of presentations or similar kind of lectures. So that experience you have in common, that situation you are having in common, or that event you have in common. Okay, so in focus group interview, these are group of people who are having common situation, common phenomena, common event, or they're undergoing that particular situation or phenomena in common. Okay, and to those people you are interviewing in a group, that is called as a focus group interview. In a focus group interview, you explore the perceptions, experiences, and the understandings of group of people who have some experience in common with regard to a situation or event, right? Use the method of recording that suits you the best. Now here you can use any method of recording, whatever that suits you. Maybe you can write on a piece of paper, or maybe you can use electronic way of recording the data, maybe audio electronic way of recording data, video electronic way of recording data, whatever suits to you. So that way you can record the data. Okay, it depends on the interviewer, or so it depends on the researcher or investigator. So that is focus group interview. So we discussed in-depth interview and focus group interview. So what is difference? In-depth interview is face-to-face interaction with a single person, with single individual. Okay. And in focus group discussion or focus group interview, you have a group of people who are having common experience, or who are undergoing common situation or common condition, or they are a part of common event. So that is a focus group interview. In focus group interview, what do you explore? You explore the perceptions, feeling, or emotions of a person, single person. But in case of focus group interview, you explore the perception, feeling, emotions of a group of people, experiences of a group of people. Okay, so these are the differences between in-depth interview and focus group interview. They are similar spectra, like one is only for one person and other is for a group of people having common experience, right? Coming to next, that is narratives. Narratives means somebody's telling the story, like narrations are happening. The person is narrating and you are just passively listening, and you are recording that narrations, right? So narratives have almost no predetermined contents, except that the researcher seeks to hear person's retelling of an incident or happening in his or her life. So basically what is happening here? These are the narrations. These are the person's retelling. These are the person's whatever has happened in the past. That person is telling, or the interviewer, or you can say participant is telling in his or her own word, and you are listening passively. You are collecting that data passively. Okay. So there is no predetermined contents. There is no predetermined guide. There are no predetermined questions related to that particular thing, because it is a narration which is given by a participant, narration which is given by a the person who is part of that particular experience, or that part of that particular situation or phenomena. That person is narrating something. That person is narrating his or her story, and you are just noting down, or you are just recording it in your way, right? Essentially, the person tells his or her story about an incident or situation, and you as the researcher listen it passively. So this is important. You are just passively listening. There is no active role of the researcher. There is no active role of the investigator. It is just a passive role, that is listening and recording. So you are listening and recording the conversation. Maybe you are recording on a piece of paper, or you are recording with the electronic devices. That is up to you, right? Basically, you let the person talk freely and without interrupting. So there are certain situations. Suppose you are dealing with the people like Bhopal gas tragedy. So it's a narration. You will listen what happened on that particular day. You will just passively listen. The incident, total incident, you will listen it as a story, the story which has happened in the past. You will listen it as a history that has happened in the past. Okay. So passively you will listen whatever things will happen, and you may not have many things to ask, because if that person is telling everything about that particular incident, maybe you will have very few questions related to that particular situation or phenomena. So you will passively listen to it and you will record it. Narratives are a very powerful method of data collection for situations which are sensitive in nature. Now, this situation, like Bhopal gas tragedy, it's a very sensitive situation. So, for this kind of situation, when you want to have in-depth exploration, when you want to have in-depth exploration of somebody's perception, feeling, or emotions of that particular situation or condition, it is the best or one of the best situations, or it is one of the best methods of recording the data. Okay, means narrations are nowadays it is easy to record the narrations. You need not have to write anything. You can just keep your recorder on. You can have audio recording or you can have video recording. If video recording is not contributing much for contribution for your content or for analytical part, then you did not have to go for video recording. Generally, what happens when you are doing a video recording, that times there is possibility that some people they may be shy in front of camera or they might change their behavior because they are not used to, like everybody is not used to talk in front of camera or everybody is not used to talk in front of whenever you are recording the video. So it is the bias, there is possibility of bias, maybe conditioning effect, or they might change their behavior, like they know that they are observed. Okay, so passively you can just keep your audio recorder on, and if it is not needed, like if there is a narration which doesn't require video recording or video recording is not contributing any additional knowledge for analysis or for content analysis, don't go for this kind of video recording. Just go for audio recording that you can listen multiple times. When you are just audio recording, the people will not change their behavior. Okay, so there is least possibility that they will change their behavior. But when you are putting the camera or when you are putting the video recording devices, there is great possibility that they might change their behavior and it will introduce bias in your final observations or final analysis. Oral history. Now, oral history, it is one of the popular methods in social sciences and health sciences. So if you see the whole social sciences, they collect many data points or many data sets by oral history, as well as health science people. It is their integral part. For health sciences, history taking is the integral part. You go to any health science, the history is integral part of their system. So oral history will involve what? Passive and active listening. Passive and active listening means there are participants, there are informants. Okay, so they are part of your research project, and as a participants, they will tell their history, what happened in the past. Okay, whatever incidences happened in the past, maybe people who are having undergone the Bhopal gas tragedy, they will tell their incidents, whatever happened in the past, how it happened, who are the responsible people, or through what they have gone, like what kind of ill effects they have seen. So all these things they will tell, and that is called as history. That is oral history. Oral history means here what is happening here. There is both passive and active listening. Passive and active listening means what? You are just listening passively as well as you are contributing. You are asking questions in between. That is oral history. In narrations, you are passive. You are just listening to that particular narration. So that is the basic difference between narration and oral history. In oral history, as an investigator, you are in between asking certain questions. Certain questions may be related to your research problem or whatever information you want to gather. So those questions, relevant questions, you are asking to the participants. That is oral history. But in case of narration, you are not interrupting the participant. You are not interrupting the person who is telling her or his story. Okay, so that is the basic difference between narration and oral history. Oral histories, however, are more commonly used for learning about a historical event or episode that took place in the past. So basically the name itself suggests like whatever happened in the past, that data when you collect, it is called as oral history. It is historical data. Whatever things happen in the past that you are getting information is oral history that took place in the past, or for gaining information about the cultural custom or story. Like if we want to know the culture of one particular community, okay, culture maybe 1,000 years back, what was the culture of Indian culture or maybe Southeast Asian culture. So if you want to study on those kind of things, that is historical cultures, then this kind of studies are important. Customs, similar cultures and customs or story that has been passed from generation to generations. We have been listening so many stories, like maybe from our grandfathers or grandmothers. So many stories have been passed from generation to generation in the communities or in the different kinds of community. In India, there are so many communities, there are so many religions. Okay, and there are so many states in India, so many different kind of people they live together. And there are certain customs or there are certain cultures where different kind of stories are passed from generation to generation. You all have gone through that experience. Maybe your grandparents or maybe grandmother or grandfather must have told you all those stories. So that is the historical data. many things are recorded based on such kind of things which have been passed from generation to generation. Previously, when people were not having anything to write, it was just oral things. Orally, they used to transfer the knowledge from one generation to another generations. So that you have seen long back, like when there were no writing tools or when writing tools were not developed. That time, the information means knowledge, the basic knowledge about your culture, about your custom, or basic knowledge about the science was transferred to just oral communication from one generation to another generation. And for that reason, this whole historical data is important, or oral histories are important for such kind of qualitative studies. Now, research instrument in qualitative research. So in qualitative research, what are you doing? You are dealing with somebody's perception, feeling, or emotions. Okay. So in qualitative research, what you are doing in qualitative research, you are collecting the data, or data in qualitative research are not collected through a data through a set of predetermined questions, but by raising issues around different areas of inquiry. In case of quantitative research, you have predetermined set of questions. Maybe you have 10 questions. You will ask these 10 questions to all the participants and you will collect the data. Maybe you will have numerical data, categorical data, or you will have narrations. But in case of qualitative data or in case of qualitative research, you are not having any kind of predetermined questions. You do not have a set of predetermined questions. It is based on the situation. You are listening to the people. There is narration, there is oral history. Okay. And you are asking them questions based on whatever answers they are giving, or you are just passively listening to them. So how do you collect the data? By raising issues around different areas of inquiry. So whatever different areas of inquiry that come across while that interview or during that conversation, around that area, you will ask the questions and collect the data. Hence, there are no predetermined research tools. There are predetermined research tools in case of quantitative research, but in qualitative research, there are no such predetermined tools, because qualitative research will not go by numbers. Qualitative research will deal with somebody's perception, feeling, and emotions that cannot have parameters. Okay, somebody's feeling cannot have standard deviation or cannot have average value, but quantitative research that deals with the numbers, that deals with the numerals, and hence you can have average of something, average of somebody's attitude of Indian population in regards to use of mask, attitude of Indian population in regards to vaccination program. Okay, so you can have average, you can have standard deviation, you can have other parameters also for that kind of data. In that situation, you will have predetermined questions, predetermined tools. Such predetermined tools are available only in quantitative research, and those are not available in qualitative research. Now, if we go back to quantitative research, you have seen these steps to formulate a research instrument in quantitative research. So these are the steps, these are the fixed steps for formulation of research instrument in quantitative research. But there is no such instrument which is available for qualitative research. Why? Because in qualitative research, there is no predetermined set of questions. There is no predetermined thing. You are just listening to the perceptions, feeling, and emotions of someone, and you are just analyzing it, analyzing out of that, right? It is not number, it is not parameter. There is no application of parameter. It is everybody's story may be different. In case of quantitative research, the story cannot be different. It is not a story, it is the number. So numbers will have average values. Numbers will have some deviation, maybe lower range, upper range. That is possible, but they will fit into some kind of data that will have lower range to upper range to lower range, right? So in quantitative research, you always have this kind of research instrument or steps that are followed to form the research instrument. But research instrument in qualitative research, there are no predetermined research tools.
Like a quantitative tool, but a set of domains or something can be created.
Anything that is used for collection of data is called as research instrument or research tool. Your questionnaire is research tool. Your the narrations which is told by the participant, that is tool. Oral history is a tool. So all those things, or you may have some equipment also. So now if I want to measure PM 2.5 particle level in this particular region, so I'll be using some equipment. So that equipment is my research tool. So research tool means anything that you use for collection of data. To that tool, you are getting the information, you are getting the data. Okay, so it is a way of getting information.
Space therapy
Mhm.
in children with special needs,
Mhm.
particularly cerebral palsy. So one of the things which in my during my diploma, actually, that small project that I had done at that time, my mentor had told me that the artwork that they create, children. So if that is to be qualitatively analyzed, you prepare a kind of uh, it's not exactly a quantifiable scale, but just to a checklist kind of
Content
thing. So
analysis.
the response to music, for example, and
Right, right.
they're using a percussion instrument. So what is the how often are they applying the force, or which instrument do they prefer, or if it's a visual artwork, then whether they're covering the whole page or not, or which colors do they have preference for, or which art material
You have. So basically, it's a content analysis. Whatever content you are getting, that content you have to analyze. In case of qualitative research, you go for content analysis. Whatever content you are getting from different participants, that content you analyze and you come to a conclusion. But in quantitative research, it is not the case. You directly apply a test of significance and you get your answer, or you come to final conclusion. So after applying that particular test, whether there is statistically significant difference between different groups or not. So that kind of data you will get. But in qualitative research, it is the content analysis. What you got out of that content, what is the content, whether it is similar for all the participants or whether it is different for all the participants. If it is different, at what level it is different and why it is different. It is not just at what level. In quantitative research, you will just find the magnitude, okay, intensity. But if the in-depth exploration is possible in case of qualitative research, you will get answer for everything. Why, how, where. You will get answer for everything in case of qualitative research. That is not possible in case of quantitative research.
Related with any one episode or one. It can be anything. So for example, it's a child who's with autism or something who's minimally verbal. And if in every session I ask him to narrate everything that happened through the day, just for me to understand whether his episodic memory is intact, whether he's what he is he paying attention to. Something that kind of a narration is also
that is a narration. When you are passively listening, when you are not interfering your participant and you are just passively listening or passively recording that conversation, then it becomes a narration. Narration will give you very good data and data that you have to analyze. That content analysis will be required, but you will get rich data. It is a perception of somebody without any interference. You will get the real data. When you ask questions, sometime the person who is a participant, that person deviate because of your question. He or she may deviate from whatever he or she wants to tell. But when the person is telling the story and when you are not interfering that person, the person will go with or her, with his or her flow. Okay, so whatever data you are getting, that is a pure correct data, original data, and without any kind of interference. Like there is no interference from the outside. No, no, no. Prompting means, see, maybe in your case, prompting, I don't know, like it's a different condition. Autism is a condition, it's pathological condition. Yeah, yeah.
Now after this, what will you say? Like just such
That is okay, but they are telling narrations. You are not actively asking them questions because it's a specialized condition. It is like a pathological condition. So you are interrupting. Yeah, you are helping them, but it is a narration. Oral history means you are passively listening, and in between you are asking the questions. So that becomes you are here. You are just helping them. You are helping them for their narration because they are not able to. That is the thing. Even for maybe kids who are mentally retarded or a population who is mentally retarded, sometimes they do not, or sometimes they forget. Okay. Or there are certain diseases where the people have a tendency of forgetting the things. So in those conditions also, you have to just remind by certain tricks or tools. So in qualitative research, many researchers develop a loose list of issues. So basically, it's a loose list of issues. What is that issue or what is that list? That list is related to your research objective. That list is related to your research hypothesis. That list is related to your research problem. So that in the end, you want to have answer to your research problem. What is expected or what is objective of study or studying this research project, because you want to have answer to your research problem. So whatever is your research hypothesis, whatever is your research question, you will have a loose list related to the issues related to that research problem. So many researchers develop a loose list of issues that they want to discuss with the respondents or to have ready in case what they want to discuss does not surface during the discussion. Sometimes what happens, suppose you are dealing with a narration or you are dealing with the oral history. If there is narration and the person is narrating, okay, the participant is narrating, but that narration is going in different direction. That narration is not having any addition, or that narration is not supporting to find answer to your research problem. That narration is not helpful to find answer to your research objective or research hypothesis. In that case, you should have loose list. So that loose list will help you to would help you to interfere, and you can ask that person to come to the main issue, whatever is issue under study. because you want to have answer for your research problem, not the research problem which are not related to your study. So in that case, you should have your loose list of the issues related to your research problem. This loosely developed list of issues is called as interview guide. So we call it as an interview guide. Interview guide means just broad points are written in the interview points. Like these are my research objective, and related to research, my research objective or research hypothesis, I want to collect this kind of data, or I want to have narration or history around these particular points. Okay, because sometime the person, the participant may go into different areas. The participant go into different variables that are not related to your research, or that is not part of your research. Okay, so that may not be required, and then you can get that participant back to the track of your research problem. Okay, so that is the use of your interview guide. So what do you have in your qualitative research as a research instrument? It is just interview guide. It is just a guide for your research problem, research objective, or research hypothesis, and nothing else. So there are no predetermined steps. There are no predetermined tools. Predetermined steps, predetermined tools, they are available in case of quantitative research, and they are not available in case of qualitative research. Now, collecting data using secondary sources. We finished with the primary source of data collection. Now we are moving to secondary sources of data collection. Now, what is meant by secondary source? Secondary source means the source that is created by someone else, the data which is collected by someone else, the data which is already available in the records. So that data is called as a secondary source data. Primary data means as an investigator, as a researcher, you collect that data and that becomes your primary data. But secondary source data is data which is already existing, already available, already collected by someone. Okay, some other investigators. And when you are using that data, it is called as a secondary source data. What are the ways of collecting secondary source data? You have government or semi-government publications. So government every yearly publish the data related to all the fields. Maybe it is finance related field, IT field, or maybe health related field, education field, social science problems. So government will every year publish the data related to different fields, right? So that is the government publications. You can collect the data from government publications, and that becomes the secondary source data. Earlier research means other investigators have studied similar research problem. Whatever research problem you are studying, similar research problems have been studied by other investigators, and that earlier research data you are using for your purpose. Like doing meta-analysis. Meta-analysis, what you are doing, you are collecting data from different articles and then you are analyzing. So every article has their own analysis, but meta-analysis means it's a analysis of all the research papers. Okay, all the research paper related to your research problem. So it is earlier research which is done by someone else. You are not contributing your own research. There is no primary source of data collection. It's a secondary data which is collected by someone, and you are just analyzing that data. Or earlier research is available. Personal records. Many people, they have a habit of keeping personal records. So when you have such a group of participants who are having their personal records, or if you can have you get the data from their personal records, then that becomes your secondary source of data. Mass media. So nowadays a lot of things are available in mass media. You can just put anything on the mass media, and most of the things are available in mass media. So there are so many research platforms which are available on internet. The research platform are available on the media. And through this platform, you are collecting the data, you are getting the data, getting the information, and that becomes your secondary source of data. Now, what are the problems which are associated with the secondary source data? See, there are four basic problems that you deal with this particular secondary source data. First is validity and reliability. Validity means accuracy. Accuracy means what? Whether that data is true or false, whether that data is correct or incorrect, because it is not collected by you, it is collected by someone else. So many times you cannot rely on that particular data because this validity may or may not be tested. There are certain kinds of data points with the validity is not tested. Validity is not tested by the scientific communities. So that data may not be reliable. So validity, you cannot have that validity of that particular data. Reliability means consistency or repeatability of the data. You are not also sure about that data, whether is this data will be helpful to obtain the reliable results, or this data will give the results which will not be helpful for your study. So validity and reliability is always questioned when it is secondary source data. Personal bias. Personal bias means you will introduce your own bias, or the investigators, other people, the person who has collected the data, that person has already have bias because of his personal behavior, because of his personal perception, because of his personal emotions. So that is possible. See, different people have different personalities, different people have different emotions. Okay, and that is the integral part of everybody's personality. So personal bias is many times introduced because of the personal traits, right? And that you cannot avoid when it's a secondary source data, because you cannot have any measure to correct it. Okay, in case of primary data, you can have the measures to correct those bias, right? You can correct the bias, you can correct those things, but in case of data which is secondary source data, you cannot correct it because it is collected by someone else. Availability of the data, many times the data is not available, many times the data is not given by the sources. Like suppose the data is available with the government, so maybe because of some reasons they may not give, or non-government agencies, they may not share the data, they may not share the personal data of the participants. Okay, many times this happens whenever you go for collection of some kind of data, getting data from medical records, or getting data from historical records, or getting data from government records. They do not share the data because of privacy purposes. Okay, so availability of data is not possible in such cases. To format. Now, whenever you conduct any kind of research project, you have your own format for data collection. You have your own variables, and you want to collect data in particular format with particular variables with particular measurement scale. That format, or the data which is existing, or secondary source data that is existing, is not present in the format that is applicable for you, or the your format, whatever format you have proposed. Okay, so these are four basic problems that are associated with your secondary source data. First is validity and reliability. It is not true data, and repeatability, or it doesn't have a consistency. There is possibility of personal bias because it is collected by someone else, and whatever personal perception that person is having, maybe because of those personal perception, the bias is introduced. Availability of the data, because of uh, confidentiality of data, some kind of data, the data may not be available. So that could be a problem. Format of the data, format may not match with what kind of variables or what kind of measurement scales you are using for your research. So these are some of the problems which are encountered when you are dealing with secondary source data. What is expected from you? So you always go for primary source data. It is the most reliable data. You can apply different validity tests. You can apply reliability tests for your data. You can check validity with the internal and external factors for your data. And then you can come to a conclusion. You can come to a result. Okay, so that is the advantage which is associated with the primary source data.